Okay. Welcome to Bookfluencers. I'm Sonia. I'm here with Emily, Borsa, and Allison from ART, Adult Reading Roundtable Committee. We're committee members. And our group, some of you have probably heard of us, but we are a group of librarians that promotes RA training, readers advisory programs. And our mission is that we are dedicated to developing readers advisory skills and promoting reading for pleasure. Check out our website at arrtreads.org. This Zoom panel will be recorded. It is being recorded right now, so for further future viewing. And Emily is gonna start off the introductions.
Yes, really quickly, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We have someone monitoring that, and then we'll ask all the questions at the end of the discussion. We're going to jump right in. We're going to do bookstagrammers first, and our first speaker is Athens Moreno from the Zion-Benton Public Library. He's been in libraries for over 18 years in both children and adult services. So go ahead and get started, Athens. We're ready.
All right, thank you. Always makes me sound old when I say 18 years. Gosh, right out of high school. Okay, I'll get this started up here. Okay, well, hello everyone out there. You can see me, but I can't see you. I hope everyone is safe. I know the name on the slide here is kind of corny. That was supposed to be there. So Insta Success for Instagram. I put the ha there just in case. I didn't want you to think that I did not know that that was a corny name for the title there. We'll get started. As Emily mentioned, I'm Athens Moreno, Head of Adult Services over here at the Zion-Benton Public Library. 18 years working in both kids and adult. Probably the last 7 years I've been doing social media for libraries, specifically at Glencoe Public Library, but I have some experience in working and also doing some online things over at Skokie Public and Gale Borden, and currently at Zion-Benton Library. So there's the ZB Library hashtag, so you can see some of my recent work, relatively new over here. So there's some work that I've done on our social media feeds. And you're more than welcome to reach out to me either through the library. Library Kind of Guys, kind of my social media handle for various platforms for a personal side. So certainly reach out to me any way you can if you have any questions or just want some tips or feedback regarding your social media ventures. We'll just jump right into it with little stats, little background for Instagram. These are from 2020 from Hootsuite. So 63% of Instagram users are logged in at least once per day. So if you are new with your library's Instagram or there's not a lot of followers, just think of it, well, if we have 100, 63 are using at least once a day. Another thing I want to point out here that 1/3 of the most viewed stories are from businesses. I will kind of get into a little bit of how you can use stories to promote your services as well. 1 billion people are using Instagram every month. As I mentioned with stories there, so 500 million are using Instagram stories every day. These are current numbers, and you know how it is out there. I feel like we're probably still be in the ballpark of these numbers for the foreseeable future. And maybe when this is all over, there'll be even more online because people will be celebrating once we're past this COVID stuff. So I don't see the numbers trailing off so with a big drop anytime soon. So for getting started with Instagram for your library, whether it's kind of marketing your collection, your resources, or even just doing some RA, anytime you take on another platform of communication, I always say, well, evaluate what you have. You are doing something with social media, you might want to use that time to do a social media audit. There's a lot of templates you can find through Hootsuite. You can even kind of repurpose some of the ones you find in Excel or PowerPoint. Something I've used is repurpose like a database or a budget, just something so you can get on a piece of paper all the accounts you have, the logins, the credentials, who's doing what, maybe even have some of the analytics on there just to see if you want to cut ties with something. You might say, okay, you know what, we're going to bring in Instagram, but we're going to lose Snapchat, or we're going to bring in Instagram and TikTok, but we might lose these other things there. And as you do that audit, you might see some information that can say, okay, you know what, we are able to take on another channel, but let's prioritize the workflow. Let's see if we're going to have a device that's dedicated to this. With Instagram, you can do some with some scheduling software, but it is something that's kind of tied to a phone. So you have to keep that in mind too. if you're going to allow either your personal device or if you're going to get a tablet for your department or just for the specific need of promoting something through Instagram. Time dedication. Not only are you going to bring on something, but to take creative photos might mean you have to step away from the desk, or you might have to do something outside the library or use props or something at home. Do you have the time to take that on? And if you do use a scheduling software, are you going to dedicate time per week or someone off desk or whatnot to work in the back or whatnot to really work on scheduling? So a lot of things come into play as far as the time that's involved, kind of the manpower. Can you call on others? If you're going to use Instagram to promote your collection, is it going to be with other librarians? Are you going to use the library's account? Are you going to have separate accounts? Who's going to feed photos? Are you going to store them somewhere? Are you going to upload automatically to like a Flickr, which I've done in the past? Or are you going to save them to somewhere on your shared drive, like a photo, in case you want to reuse them for other purposes, like your e-news or flyers that get mailed out? And if you don't have a policy for social media, if you are going to take on something, it's always a good idea to kind of revisit that conversation to either update the policy or to create one. Budget and reporting. If you're taking on something, again, could be the time to revisit if it's worth having a dedicated budget line, how you're going to report the analytics of using the new Instagram or whatever platform, and then who's going to do what work and when. When you take on a new thing, promoting awareness and buy-in is always key. So as I mentioned with the budget, if you are able to dedicate some funds and makes it tangible, that makes it something that now you're reporting maybe at every board meeting, maybe you're reporting annually, makes the stats important, and therefore you kind of get that awareness of your new platform. You can also kind of monitor circulation jumps and say, hey, since we've done Instagram and RA, we've noticed jumps in circulation of large print or this and that, what have you. You can also keep tabs on your e-news signups if you're doing something, your reading club numbers, and see if a new communication channel has brought some rise in those numbers. As you're taking on something, a good opportunity to always see if it's worth having a social media committee. If you're going to do something with Instagram on your own, you might not need so many cooks in the kitchens per se, so you might want to just keep it to 1 or 2 staff. But again, if you're going to be scheduling and you're saving files, how many phones people are going to be using, that's where sometimes the less the better. And putting social media platform display, if you're taking on social media or introducing Instagram, you might want to look at having the logo for newsletters, on handouts, website icons, things of that nature, so that way you can get kind of the word out that you are Instagram instead of just kind of relying on whoever's just going to look you up through Google search. And just some reminders we'll go into kind of, some best practices, but just before you post, if you feel, I don't want you to rush into something, I want you to realize, again, are you on a device? There are some scheduling software things that you can do, but Instagram is tied to the phone. Often people will sit down on a desktop and say, okay, I'm going to go online and start posting to Instagram. That's great. How are you going to do that? You can't just pull up a browser and start posting pictures. And where are you going to get the pictures too? If you are new to it with your library, then make sure you have a business profile. It allows you to put like hours of operation, your contact, website, things of that nature to make it more professional. Connect your social accounts, but use wisely, especially if you're going to do cross promotion and cross posting. Something to keep in mind, links don't work on Instagram. I still see many libraries and even businesses put something like, hey, click here for our ebook, or click here to get the latest John Grisham. I can't click on the link. I have to highlight everything, and even then that's still troublesome to do. If you cross promote onto Twitter, just something to keep in mind, the Instagram photos don't come in. It's something that they have to click on, and it prompts them to download the app. So just something to keep in mind there. Hashtags and tagging are helpful. Even if you have to tag the location of the library all the time, that's still something, because people can click on that and then maybe see other photos. Same thing with the hashtags. Refer patrons to a website or link in bio. You might see that kind of like, slogan on certain things. If you're going to do something like promote your reading club or promote an event, change the link that's in your bio from being the library's homepage to something, so that way it is something direct. Otherwise, again, there's not really like that direct link that people can click on. And again, tagging your location is helpful too, so that way you can see your other photos. Some resources, and I'll have a slide later on with a little bit more, but just something for photos. I use Pixabay, Pexels, they're free. For scheduling, I've used Hootsuite. I'm currently using later.com, which is working great. And Canva, maybe many of you know about Canva, but they also do work for nonprofits, so you can get a free pro account. So that's something to keep in mind there when you're creating like your graphics. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You might be able to use a photo online, maybe tweak it a little bit with your Canva, or you don't have to worry about having Photoshop and Word and Excel type of skills. You can just use something from Canva to get you kind of a creative font or text. So promoting titles and collections. I have some pictures here and just some themes that I've done in the past. You know, Monday motivation, you know, especially because that's like a trending hashtag. New Book Tuesday. As you know, in libraries with the processing of books usually come up on Tuesdays, with movies as well. Throwback Thursday. So taking advantage of some of the ones that are kind of out there trending. I've done staff picks. I've done book face too. The rewards are great, but it's also a lot of work dealing with the book face, because I feel like if you don't have a collection of things ahead of time, it's hard to walk around the library and try to find that one book, and then to maybe even find a staff member that fits the image, so to speak. So that's something, and with any of these, if you're able to kind of build up a collection beforehand, so that way you have a stash, that way you're not running around on the day of, it's always helpful there. Seasonal event inspired, very easy to do. As you can kind of see from the example there, this is one what I did last year at Glencoe, promoting like the bestseller shelf. I introduced like a Cubs hat to say opening day. And I think I said it's opening day, and so also new release Tuesday, something to kind of tie into that. Some other ones I've done, like winter reads, is always great with scenic shots. Sports, as you can tell there. Anniversaries, you know, deaths, trending events. Those are always things that you can use. You know, the anniversary of a Beatles collection, you have some books, or it's a job fair week in your local town, you might want to promote some books that way. And if you're not familiar, ALA has a website which has like all the celebration type of weeks that you can use to promote too, like Friends of the Library Week, or Smart Money Week, things like that to kind of give you some ideas to and how to promote some of the collection that's hidden too. Some other examples here of how I've used Instagram for promoting collections and titles. You can see, you know, the Kobe Bryant there. I have a staff member who took one outside with What You Lose there with the flowers. Putting some personalization to it always helps, you know, something recommended by one of your staff, especially if you're in a community where there's a lot of face-to-face and people kind of know everyone's name. And you can do collections too. So this is a Throwback Thursday mystery collection, kind of spruce up something that doesn't get heavily circulated. You certainly can kind of find a hashtag or find your own kind of theme that match. So you can see over the course of my time doing this, sometimes the creativity has grown as well, where instead of just throwing a bunch of new books on a platform to take a picture of, you start kind of personalizing and maybe identifying a certain one. Promoting other services and resources. This is something that the library I was at we were going to the beach a few times a week, and kind of the beach reads there. There's also the plug for the 3D printing. This is, even though it's beach reads, actually I think this was for like the Throwback Thursday still, but it was to promote the service that the library was going to the beach to hand out books and things of that nature. And then of course it got a little cut off maybe for you, but there's May the 4th. From last year, promoting some of the Star Wars collection there, as well as the 3D printing. So that way you're promoting some RA, you're kind of combining it with, you know, a celebratory type of event, but then also promoting your services or your resources. This is some example here. I touched a little bit about stories. Stories is trending. I feel like it stays on your profile, and it's great because I feel like I've had more views of my stories than even like followers or more likes and things of that nature. I think it's something a little more interactive, and people kind of take the time to look and see what you have. Plus, when you only show like a little glimpse of your story that's in your profile, you can see from the picture on the right, it kind of invites you to click on it to see exactly what that does, versus kind of browsing through the photos. So I have seen an upward tick in like story views. So again, for promoting services and resources, you can use, you know, your Instagram, kind of your RA, to combine with promoting like 3D printing, your curbside service, your lobby service, whatever current state you might be in now. You can also do it with outreach opportunities if you take photos out somewhere else, just like how with the beach reads there. And as you can see with these, you can promote your databases, your digital resources there too. I really like how the stories show up in your profile, and you can have different ones there. So I just put the ebook one not too long ago. I probably will have another one there that might be like staff picks, and then now you kind of have another way to kind of introduce RA, as well as kind of getting that personal touch with your patrons. And kind of, to summarize it, just some tips to remember here. Organize your photo flow. In doing this over the years, I find like I have photos stored on my phone, on my iPad, on my computer at work, my computer at home. If you can somehow like upload them or put them in a shared drive folder or something. I've used Flickr before because that way, at least for me on my iPhone, when you have a photo, you can just like auto upload. Dropbox and Google Drive, those things can work as well. It's good to have them saved in case you use them for other things, as I mentioned, like with e-news or like a flyer, or in case you want to, re-promote a database or a book, and that way you don't have to kind of do a whole new photo. You can go back from what you had before. Start small with your schedule. If it's something new you're going into, or even if you just want to beef up your Instagram promotion, it's still time consuming. As I mentioned, if you have to leave the desk to take a photo, or if a staff member has to have coverage or something like that. So I would, try to dedicate maybe once a week or, an hour to focus on a collection at a time. As I mentioned, Instagram is not for website links. So please, if that could be the takeaway, that would be the takeaway. Be creative. You can see in some of my earlier photos, I was just putting new books on a chair and taking photos of New Book Tuesday. And then eventually it kind of, got a little creative as I went. I stopped taking pictures of like taped up signs. It's easy for you to kind of, when you're taking the photo, be like, oh, you know what, this looks good enough. But then for the viewer, it's like, oh, this is not something that's worth my time, or this is not very creative. Nothing really to kind of bring them back. I mentioned we touched back a little bit on some of the resources there. So for images, and these are all things that I've used as well, Death to Stock, which is like an email one that can get to your inbox. They're a little more on the artsy side, but certainly something that you can explore to see if it might be a fit for what you're going to promote. Pexels and Pixabay is great. I've used Unsplash as well. These are things that you can get emailed to you. Free Pick, and then Canva does have they're like stock photos as well. For analytics, the analytics for Instagram could be a little bit limited to just like the last 28 days. You can get some from later.com as well as Hootsuite, Tailwind, Iconosquare. Some of them you hit a wall when you are using the free. So is it worth the trade-off to pay for something just to give you a little bit more of a number detail? Maybe so. Again, if you're promoting it in your board collection stats or something like that, that's where it might be worth to go for like a paid program. For scheduling, Hootsuite, later.com are some of the ones I'm currently using. The free versions work just fine. There are Buffer, Sprout, HubSpot. For e-newsletters, you might be able to tie in Instagram into your constant contact or your MailChimp, depending on what you're using for that. Some other things just to keep in mind for link shortage, Bitly, Owly, and then I get a lot from like social media marketing Facebook groups. That's certainly something to keep in mind. If you look on there, there's some Facebook groups where people kind of share ideas and maybe ask for support and questions and tips. I've definitely benefited from that. And then finally, just there's some browsers extensions. If you do use some of these platforms, they do have browsers extensions to make it a little bit easier for you to highlight and clip a photo and then promote it that way without having to save as and things of that nature. So that sums it up for me. I'll go back to the first slide so you have my contact information again. Again, feel free to reach out to me at either one of these platforms. You can always just kind of look me up, amoreno@zblibrary.org, or follow one of the hashtags there, and certainly reach out if you have any questions or anything to talk about. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Athens. Moving right along, we have Melissa Keegan, and she's the head of adult reference at the Ela Public Library. She's been working in libraries for 12 years and bookstagramming for over 3 years at Roses Are Red, R-E-A-D, on Instagram. So Melissa, take it away.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you again for that introduction, and thanks to the Adult Reading Roundtable and for Rails for organizing this program today. Super excited to share my love of bookstagramming for you all. Again, my name is Melissa Keegan. I am the head of reference at the Ela Area Public Library in Lake Zurich. Today, however, I'm going to be talking about Bookstagram from a personal perspective. I solely do this for myself. I don't do it for my library at all. That's just my little disclaimer for today. So what is Bookstagram? To me, Bookstagram is a niche community of book-loving people within Instagram who share the joy of reading. People post pictures of books, bookshelves, book merchandise, all types of bookish things, and they often caption it with reviews or comments about those books. So I stumbled upon Bookstagram in the end of 2016 in kind of a funny way. One of my favorite bookmark companies threw out a challenge. I don't know, hopefully you can see this. They threw out a challenge called #LegsInBook. It's not the most clever hashtag, but it clearly gets the point across. They asked the Bookstagram community to mimic their bookmarks, and each post that people posted was an entry into the contest. Now, in the middle of winter, coming up with ideas and setting up these posts became my absolute favorite thing to do. Clearly, I even learned how to do a stop motion video as one of my entries. Sadly, though, I didn't win the contest. But I did end up spending a whole lot more money on additional bookmarks. And I also, most importantly for today, I gave this company a bunch of free publicity. But what I personally found out was how much I enjoyed flexing my creativity muscles, coming up with all sorts of ideas. And so that's how I've launched my Bookstagram account. So why Bookstagram as a librarian? For me, Instagram is my favorite social media platform because it's so photo driven. You'll see that today with my presentation. Bookstagram is a way for librarians to get firsthand insight into what people are reading. But even more so, librarians get to see what people are really, really excited about reading, so much so that they've created a beautiful post around a specific book or a series. Plus, I've also found that Bookstagram has been a really great resource for me for collection development. Sometimes you can get a really early scoop on books because people have posted them about them. And I know as librarians, we already technically got an early scoop on books with ARCs and review journals, and most of us are probably on NetGalley. But I'm still really surprised by how many books I've seen on Bookstagram first. It happens quite a lot. I just take a screenshot of it and email it to myself to order it for later. I also recommend following publishers and authors when you get started, posting, tagging them in your posts as well. That way you can create a direct connection with publishers and authors. It can also be really helpful with Reader's Advisory. Athens talked a lot about this already, so I won't have to go into it any more than that. So hopefully I've convinced you why you should all join Bookstagram. Now I'd like to share some suggestions for starting your own account. I recommend doing a little bit of research first. This will help you get an idea of what kind of content you will see on Bookstagram, and also what kind of content you would like to share on Bookstagram. You'll see how important hashtags are when it comes to finding new accounts, but also it'll making sure that your account is found. Hashtags can seem pesky and silly, but it's how your account is actually found by others. If you don't use them, only the people that follow you are going to be able to see your posts. When you do use them, your posts will show up in topic-specific feeds, which allow you to reach a much wider audience. The max is 30 on Instagram. I don't recommend that you flood your account, your comments with a bunch of different hashtags. It can be a little bit overwhelming and take over your comment section. But TrackMaven, in their guide for hashtag strategies for social media, recommends to use at least 9 hashtags per post. That way you get the most engagement. It's also recommended to change up your hashtags every now and again. So there's always new ones being created, and now don't be shy about creating your own either. These here are just some of the more commonly used hashtags in Bookstagram, and I'll kind of get you started to follow some of these initially. So my next do is to plan ahead. As you can see, and kind of what Athens touched on, take a lot of pictures. I will rearrange my setup, add or remove objects, change orientations, you name it. I will just completely fill up my camera roll with options. I also take a lot of photos of different books so that I have kind of a stock of photos and options that I can choose from when it comes time to post. Along with also having many book photo options, I have found it really beneficial to create a separate Google Doc where I can write out captions for these books to then post in the future. I often have several captions that I'm working on, along with a list of hashtags that are specific for that book, ready to go whenever it's time to post. Instagram also does allow you to keep drafts of posts. However, it only takes a couple times for Instagram to completely delete all of that information for you to figure out a totally different solution. I don't technically recommend doing it directly in the app. And next, let the books inspire you. So this is my absolute favorite thing about bookstagramming. I love being creative with a book's cover or a title or something specific that's within the storyline that I will use in my pictures. But I recommend you use what you already have, especially since most of us are at home right now. Just look around you and see what you have that might pair with a book. Don't rush out and buy a special background. I regularly use my coffee table. You don't need a bunch of props, and you certainly don't need to fly to Paris either. I specifically took that book with me to Paris because I plan ahead. You can use other books. You can use discarded books, the pages of those as backgrounds. Food is another favorite. You can sneak over to your neighbor's house and use their flowers as a background. There's probably maybe a brick wall outside of your library or somewhere near your neighborhood that can use as a background. That's really nice. Everything is a picture opportunity, is what I say. But with all that being said, sometimes you can get really caught up in the posting of pictures and creating content. So I also want to make a point of talking about some don't forgets. Don't forget to introduce yourself. As a shy introvert, I prefer to hide behind my camera, so this one's really hard for me. But trust me, introducing yourself to the community works wonders. Show your face and share a little bit about yourself, especially if there's going to be many of you that are behind your library's account. You each should probably introduce yourself. That way some people can follow you specifically because of that one particular person's posting. You'll find that bookstagrammers are super friendly and they will gladly welcome you to the community. But also don't forget to engage your bookstagram community. As librarians, we know how important engaging our community is, and it's no different with bookstagram. Ask questions in your post, respond to people's comments, comment on other people's posts. Don't post something that you've worked really, really hard on and then close the app and hope that everybody else will do the work for you. I really strongly recommend that you engage with people. Doing something as simple as liking a bunch of their posts or writing a comment to somebody will make the world of difference. And lastly, don't forget to have fun. Join a book challenge. Right now, there's a fun one called Jenga Book Stack Challenge that's just totally taking over Bookstagram right now. You can easily do this with a bunch of books in your library or in your home. Create your own challenges to pair with your summer reading program. You could come up with something completely new for this community, something that nobody has seen yet, so be creative. This is also a really good time to create your own hashtags that are specific to your library. Encouraging others to post content using your hashtag is a prime marketing tool, just like I shared with the Legs in Books story initially. So in the end, Bookstagram is what you make it. So be creative and have fun. I wouldn't focus on how many followers you have or how many likes that you get. And don't stress about having the perfect theme or layout, because those things will come in time. You will kind of get your bearings after a little bit and you'll see that how things flow. I just completely recommend that you enjoy this amazing community filled with fellow book-loving people. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you all on Bookstagram. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. And again, we are going to have questions after all the panelists go. Then we will do the Q&A. So next up is Jessica Stalker. She is a Reader's Advisory Librarian at the Warren Newport Public Library in Gurnee, Illinois. She has worked in libraries literally since grade school. Her hobbies include feeding her 3 boys many, many times each day, boating, and of course, reading. Okay, Jessica, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks, that helps. Thank you so much. So hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for coming today. I want to talk a little bit about book talking. This is what I do at the Warren Newport Public Library in Gurnee. We're in the northern suburb of Chicago. We're a medium-sized library. We have about 67,000 people in our district. So what I do and what I started doing back in 2013, so for 7 years now I've been doing this, is book talks. And so I make these book talks and put them on YouTube and use them in all sorts of ways. So I'm excited to talk to you today about how I do that. What I like about book talks, for one thing, is that it's passive reader's advisory. I can talk about a book one time and then share it, and then a ton of different people get to see that one book talk. It's really easy, it's really efficient. I love efficiency. It's a really easy way for me as a librarian, as a Reader's Advisory Librarian, to reach as many people as possible. I think it's unique and different and something that patrons seem to really resonate with. And I think it's a valuable tool, which I'll talk about a little more later. Okay, so my videos are about between 2 and 3 minutes long. They're almost never more than 3 minutes long. I do little blurbs about the books. I just really cover the basics. I definitely read every single book I talk about, but I try to keep my book talks to what's important about the author, what's important about the characters. I'm character driven, so I'm more likely to talk about the characters in a book than I am to talk about the setting or anything else. The most important thing to me in a video is to be authentic. I would so much rather make mistakes and say than to have a script written out and read from that. I think that really takes away from what I'm trying to do here, which is form a relationship with the person watching and tell them truly what I liked about the book. Like I said, I really keep it to the highlights, and I always keep it positive. So people have asked me before, how come you don't ever review, how come you don't ever say negative things about the books that you're talking about? And my answer is, why would I make a video about a book I didn't enjoy, right? I'm not gonna go through the time and effort to make a video about a book that I didn't enjoy. Now, having said that, of course I don't love every book that I talk about. But as we know, as librarians, there is a book for every reader. And so what I try to do is find the things in the book that I think would appeal to someone, and I talk about those. So I try to just keep to the positive points of the book and to talk about why someone may enjoy it. I try really hard to choose diverse titles. I run the book discussions at our library, and so oftentimes I'm reading the books that we're also discussing, and so I don't have complete control over the titles that we're discussing, and therefore not always complete control over the titles that I'm talking about, because I want to make sure that I'm covering a lot. But I try really hard to choose diverse titles to make sure to encourage empathy in my community. And then the great Becky Stratford says, Patterson doesn't need promo. So that's something I always keep in mind. Like, if I'm choosing to talk about a book, I'm probably not going to choose the bestsellers. Have I talked about the bestsellers? Of course. There are some that I definitely have, and some of those are my more successful videos. But when at the end of the day, this book, Washington Black, needs more promotion than, you know, any New York Times bestseller. So. Okay, production. So 7 years ago, when I decided to start doing this, a coworker and I actually had a Reader's Advisory blog that we were running at the time, and we were sick of just posting reviews. It felt stale, it felt like people were bored with it, and we were like, how can we spice this up and make this more interesting? So we literally took our iPad that we had at the library and we sat across the table from each other. We held our elbows on the table to have a steady camera, and we videotaped each other talking about a book. And we did that back and forth a few times. We just grabbed a few books that we liked off the shelf and talked about those. And we did that for a while. We uploaded those to YouTube, put them on the Reader's Advisory blog, and they did okay, but we were like, you know, we kind of like it. It's kind of a fun way to sort of, you know, reach people. So, although even though that's how we started, things have sort of evolved throughout the years. Shortly after that, our graphics department approached us. We are lucky enough to have a graphics department. I totally recognize that a lot of people are not. They approached us and they said, hey, here's an idea. How about we use our nice camera to videotape you? So they started videotaping our book talks for us and then actually uploading them to YouTube for us. And then it sort of grew from there to like a beginning screen and an end screen and music, right? And then from there, it sort of grew to better backgrounds and better outfits and whatever else. So the people that we were working with in graphics, while fantastic and wonderful and friendly and all those things, really video production wasn't their background. So when that person left recently to find another job, we were lucky enough that our graphics department said, hey, you know what we could use in the qualifications for a new candidate is somebody with video production experience. So I'm so lucky and happy to say that for about the past year and a half or so, we have a new graphic artist with video production experience, and he has really taken our videos to a new level. He's done a really good job of making them feel fresh and new, and they're just really nice. So all that to say that I want you to know that your videos will evolve throughout the years and throughout time, and that's okay. And even if they don't evolve production-wise, right, even if you're still using an iPad down the road, they will evolve in that you will get better at talking to the camera, at talking about books, at finding what works for you. So don't be discouraged if you don't like your first videos. Also, I want to note that I generally record all my videos in batches. So I'll do like anywhere from 7 to 12 at a time, depending on how ambitious I am and how much I've been reading lately. And then graphics takes them, edits them, and uploads them all to Facebook for me. And then I take them, and this is what I do with them. I share them. So we use these videos for promotion at the library, right? It's like a really easy thing to do. It's really good content. So I would say I share a video maybe once every week or every other week, depending on what's going on with everything else in our social media feeds. So on the left-hand side here is an example of a Facebook post that I did recently. And I add a little blurb that says, in the video below, Jessica talks about the historical fiction story Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. If this sounds like something you may enjoy, you can find this item on Libby or in our catalog here. And I'm sure to always link to our catalog. It's just really important that they have a route to take if they're interested in the book. In the upper right-hand side, you can see a tweet that I did with the same book review. It's the exact same thing, but I tagged the author, and I want you to remember to always tag the author. I know Melissa mentioned that, and I have to say that in the beginning, I was terrified to tag the author because I thought, what if I say something wrong? What if I get something wrong about the book? What if I said the wrong date? I don't know. There's a million things. But I've learned through the years that the authors, they read so many negative reviews, right? Like they're so happy to have positivity. They're so happy to have someone take the time to talk about their book. And generally authors love libraries and librarians. So they're always really friendly. And this is something really exciting. Lisa Wingate actually took my book talk and she retweeted it and said, thank you, Warren Newport Public Library and Jessica. And I would just like to mention that this was the day before my birthday and it was a gift. So anytime an author recognizes, retweets, comments, likes anything, it's just so generous of them. And, you know, it forms a relationship. And really, technically, I could contact Lisa Wingate. I know she's really popular, but I could say, you know, thank you so much for this mention. Would you ever consider coming to my library? I mean, it's a way in, it's a conversation starter. And then on the bottom in the middle here is an example of how we put it on our website. We have a space in our website for revolving posts. Sort of like a blog, and so I do post it there as well as social media. So we're using our YouTube channel really as a holding space right now, more for where to upload the videos, and then we're using social media to really get traction on them. We do have plans, especially now that we've been working from home and making so many videos remotely, and we've been, you know, adding to our YouTube channel like crazy. We're going to promote our YouTube channel on its own eventually, but as of now, YouTube just sits there and social media does all the work for us. Okay, promotion. So I'm talking about these books, I'm talking about why they're great and the authors too, but there's other things you could do with book talk videos. So one thing I've done is use them for promotion of author visits. So usually when an author is coming to visit your library, they're nice enough to send you an ARC in advance. So what I'll usually do is read that ARC, do a book talk about it, and then at the end of the book talk, I say, great news, this author is coming to Warren Newport Public Library in August on this date and this time. We really hope that you'll join us. Books will be available for sale and for signing, and it's gonna be a great time, right? Easy enough. I mean, it's the same thing that I've been doing, but now I'm promoting the author visit too. So this video here is an example of a promotional video that I made for One Book, One Community. So this fall, we've chosen The Death and Life of the Great Lakes by Dan Egan as our One Book, One Community read for 2020. So same thing, I read the book, I talked about it just like I always do. And then I said, I'm so happy to announce that this book has been chosen as our 2020 community read. And here's what we'll be doing, you know, 4 book discussions, a ton of different programming surrounding that. Please get excited about this book. Join us and learn the ways that you can help save the Great Lakes and appreciate the Great Lakes because they're so valuable in our community. So I sort of use that book talk as a way to promote that. And now I can use this video to continually promote One Book, One Community. I mean, I will share it a few times. So think of other programs that you could maybe use this for. I mean, I could see it being used for summer reading, even if at the end of your videos, you're saying, don't forget to log your minutes, you know, or something like that. I mean, literally anything you do at the library, you can do a book talk related. I mean, even if your program is not about a book, you can read a book that's about the same subject and then promote it at the end. I mean, there's just a million things you can do with it. I also wanted to mention that having a backlog, right now after 7 years, I have 217 videos in backlog. After having this backlog, even of questionable quality, even the ones that I taped with an iPad in the meeting room, those are still in our YouTube channel because guess what? Just a month ago when racial tensions were at its peak in the United States, and when all of these important conversations were happening in our communities, and hopefully still are, I was able to go back through our channel and find books that I had talked about in the past that addressed racial tension, you know, race in America, racial experience in America. And I was able to share all those videos all over again, linked to the catalog, and it was very timely. So I shared books like Between the World and Me and the Hate You Give, etc. And I had those ready to go. And thank God I did, because I'm working from home on Zoom and I did not have an opportunity to record anything or to come up with anything new. So using that backlog is like so important, and I'm so grateful to have it. So in closing, I just wanted to say that book talks are a valuable tool for your library to have. I think that they create this really consistent experience for patrons. I'm a reader's advisory librarian, so I'm working at the adult services desk, right? So I have a lot of one-on-one time with patrons. I'm having conversations with them. They know me by name. I'm recommending books to their faces. Then they go home and they see me on social media and they watch my videos and they say, hey, I know her, I trust her, right? I like her, I like what she's recommended to me before. And they are more likely to take what I've recommended and and read that. I have had several patrons come up to me in the library and say, I've seen your videos. I watch your videos all the time. So it does kind of create this, it helps create trust with your patrons. It helps you become a more formidable resource for them. Maybe even though you're using an iPad and doing it all by yourself and uploading it to YouTube, it makes you look more professional and more, you know, just more reputable. So anyway, I hope that you will get excited about book talks. I am, and I think they're really cool. And I'm gonna go ahead and put the playlist for my Let's Talk Books channel in the chat, as well as my email address if you have questions, and I'll address your other questions later.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. So we're gonna go to our other booktuber right now. And just to, I see one question, I know we're doing questions at the end, but the one question was about recording one book at a time, like book talk about one book at a time, where as opposed to like talking about a few books at a time, maybe of the same genre or something. So that's something that Rincey does. She'll talk about a few books at one time in her videos. So I'm going to introduce Rincey Reads. Rincey Reads is her booktuber name. Her name is Rincey Abraham. She has been talking about books for about books on the internet since 2012 when she started her YouTube channel, Rincey Reads. And over the past 8 years, her channel has gained more than 26,000 followers. She is also contributing editor at Book Riot, where she makes videos for them, for their YouTube channel, and she co-hosts the Book Riot podcast, Read or Dead, and that's about the world of mysteries and thrillers. So go ahead, Rincey.
Hi, everyone. Share my screen. All right. So like Sonia was saying, I have been on BookTube for about, over 8 years now. It's 2020. So I've been doing this for quite some time. And so I thought, you know, I'm coming at this from like a consumer standpoint, kind of like how Melissa did with Instagram. Because I'm not a librarian, but I can talk a little bit about what it's like to kind of talk about books on the internet. So just to kind of start off, what is BookTube? The phrase BookTube, there's no real origin story other than someone who makes YouTube videos started calling us BookTube because we talk about books on YouTube. That's the short end of it. But it's a whole community of people. There are a lot of people now on YouTube who solely talk about books and are excited about books and are passionate about books. And we've become just sort of this like area on the internet where like if you love books, you can come and join in. It's really fantastic. So first, to just kind of give an introduction of why I started on BookTube. When I graduated from college in 2009, I like basically moved back home and, you know, peak recession, all of this stuff. So I had a lot of time on my hands and I missed the community that I had kind of in college where I was with, you know, somewhat like-minded people and we could talk about the things that we were reading and the things that we were watching and all this stuff together. And so I was, you know, lacking that. And I was also kind of lacking any sort of like creative outlet because again, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I was watching a lot of YouTubers. And at the time that I started, most of the people that I watched were vloggers. So those are people who basically just like sit and talk about themselves, their lives, their day-to-day lives. Sometimes they'll like take their camera out with them and like record what's happening just in their world. I knew that wasn't really my world because I didn't feel like expressing and sharing everything about myself on the internet. But eventually I came across someone who was doing book talks basically and book reviews on YouTube. And it's funny because I found it through John Green. John Green, obviously very popular young adult out there, and he has his own YouTube channel with his brother Hank called Vlog Brothers. And like right when he was starting to promote The Fault in Our Stars, he went to Amsterdam. And there was someone from Amsterdam who took a video of his event there, and like I found her channel through that, and then saw that there were like a handful of people who were all talking about books on the internet, and I like just absolutely loved it. And the reason why I gravitated towards that versus like say starting my own blog was because there's a lot of like passion and personality when it comes to YouTube, kind of the same way we're sitting here and I'm able to talk to you all about this, and you can kind of hear in my voice and see on my face when I get really excited about a book, or when there's something new that I want to talk about, or whatever it is. And that kind of attracts people to YouTube versus like a blog platform or something along those lines, because like when someone else is excited about something, you kind of get excited too. And so being able to share in that experience is really what got me started on BookTube. So obviously I've been doing it for a while. So I thought I would just start off talking about some like technical things related to BookTube and YouTube in general. I think YouTube can seem kind of intimidating, especially now in 2020, where there are a lot of people making YouTube videos who are like basically like professionals. They have professional equipment. A lot of times they have full teams and full like production people behind them to help them out. And so it makes their videos look amazing. But unlike in 2012, where most of the people were just sitting in their bedrooms and talking to a digital camera, you don't see as much of that anymore, but it still exists. And so a lot of times when people are first starting off, they feel very intimidated because they don't really know where to start. So if you're considering starting out with a YouTube channel, just sort of on the technical side, first I would start by talking about lighting. I think lighting is one of the most important things that people often forget about, because it doesn't matter how good your quality of a camera is. If you don't have good lighting, your video will look terrible, period. Like, and it's the same thing with photos and Instagram, I'm sure as well. Like, you have to have good lighting. Most of my recommendations, especially if you don't have a budget really, or don't have a significant budget, is to just like be near windows, record on a sunny day, things along those lines. So that way you can kind of just utilize what you have, and that in and of itself can make a huge difference. People always ask, what kind of camera do I have and what kind of camera should you use? I just say like use what's available to you when you first start off. Jessica talked about how she used her iPad that she had available at the library. I definitely recommend doing something similar when you're first starting off if you don't have access to any really fancy cameras or equipment, because those can work really well. And especially these days, like iPhones have amazing cameras on them, and they're almost just as good, if not better, than some digital cameras you could buy. So like you might as well just start with what you have. Audio is another thing that people don't realize is important. One of the things I would say when you're first starting off, if you're using something like an iPad or like your phone or something like that, do test videos and kind of see what the audio quality is. And if you need to then supplement it with some sort of microphone or something along those lines, then you can know in advance that you need that sort of equipment. But to be completely frank, my setup is I have 2 lamps that I bought from Target, like literally desk lamps. And I bought basically daylight level bulbs. I forgot what, it's like that 500 plus K wattage or whatever it is. But it says like daylight lamps on the box. So I have one in that corner, one in this corner. And it basically, like, as soon as I turn those lights on, it feels like it's daylight in here. The camera that I use is a Canon T3i. So it is a nicer camera, and I bought like a little bit of a nicer lens. But at this point, you could probably buy that same body for significantly cheaper than I did back in 2012, and be just fine. In terms of audio, what I do is I use my phone. Honestly, most phones now have voice recorders on them, or some sort of audio recording. And so I have my camera set up on my desk. It's literally on a stack of books. I don't even use a tripod. And I have my phone recording my audio in my lap. And then in most video editing softwares, there's like an option to basically join the audio and video. And the simple trick that everyone will tell you is when you hit record on the video, hit record on your phone, clap, and then there'll be like a spike in the audio, and that allows you to basically line up everything perfectly. And so that way you don't have any sort of like gaps in terms of the audio of your voice and the audio of the video. It's a neat little trick you can learn. So that's sort of like the basics. And then when it comes to editing software, I always tell everyone that like if you have access to a Mac, iMovie honestly really is pretty great. It's a really great starter video editing software. Honestly, when I first started, I was using iMovie. I got comfortable using iMovie just because I had a Mac laptop in college, and I used to make video slideshows for my friends because, you know, what else do you do in college? And so that's how I got comfortable with it. But there's like great resources out there, as I'm sure all of you are aware. You can look up YouTube videos if you're like, I don't understand how to insert a image of a book cover. Just Google it and will very easily find it. But even if you don't have access to a Mac, there are lots of free Windows software as well. So I don't think you'd need to necessarily spend a lot of money in order to get started doing YouTube. Next up, to tips on starting on BookTube. So I have this lovely photo of me. That's a screenshot from my very first video as a example of the first video will be awkward, and it's fine. This is another thing where unless you're like used to talking to a camera, if you have some sort of experience with that, you're going to feel a little bit weird the first time, and that's fine. No one expects you to start off perfectly. And if anything, I would say like record a couple of videos to get comfortable talking to a camera. What I basically do is I just talk to the camera as if I was talking to one of my friends. And I think that's one of the things that like makes it accessible to people, because they can tell I'm being honest and authentic. Do what comes natural. I'm similar to Jessica in that I don't really talk that often about books that I don't like, just because I don't really care to promote them or care to, I don't know, just talk about that. Like the things that make me excited are the books that I love. So I just talk about that more often than books that I don't enjoy. But also like a big thing with BookTube is like, if you look up booktubers after this, you'll see there are a lot of people who are, you know, teenagers, college age kids. And so they're reading a lot of like young adult books. And so a lot of people, when they start on BookTube, they feel like they have to read young adult in order to have a space for themselves, but that's not true. I read some young adult, but I don't read exclusively young adult at all. And I think sort of like do what comes natural to you. The things that you're excited about will come across on the camera, and that's honestly what's more important than anything else. A big thing with YouTube is to be consistent. I recommend, similar to what Athens was saying before, once a week at least, if you can. If you can do it more often than that, that's great, but try to stick to some sort of schedule. That's partially because then you can say in your videos, come back every Friday for a new video, or you can say something like every Tuesday or whatever, I'm doing this thing. But also the YouTube algorithm loves it, and they will then promote your videos more likely. And there's like a lot of weird things with the YouTube algorithm, which I won't get too much into because that'll be a whole separate discussion. But when it comes to people's subscription feeds, and if you think about like what pops up on a front page, the more consistent you are, the more likely you are to show up on someone's page, and to show up as a recommended video for something else. So for example, like the Washington Black video that Jessica talked about, if you typed in Washington Black by S.E.U. Keegan into the search page, if you're consistent, if people are regularly watching you, you're more likely to get towards the top of the page. If other people have made videos about it, like I've also talked about Washington Black, so there's a chance that like my video could show up in the sidebar of someone else's video talking about Washington Black. And it's all about like the consistency, the regular viewing, the interactivity that you get is really, really important. To script or not to script is basically like do whatever works best for you. I don't script in my videos because I feel like if I'm scripting, then I feel really unnatural. This is basically what I do, where I have like maybe an outline, I have like basic ideas, topics, character names, because I'm terrible at remembering character names, and I have sort of that in advance. But then everything else just sort of is like this, a very conversational style. But I do know some people, especially people who do like very in-depth discussions and things like that, they'll script their videos a little bit more, but just do whatever is comfortable for you. Either way really works. And then finally, some basic things about like the way YouTube works. A thing that I very, very much recommend is getting good thumbnails. Obviously, like if you're working at a library, you might have some branding already with the library. And so sort of playing with that is very important. But you can kind of see, I took a screenshot of what my page looks like, my YouTube page looks like. And there are going to be certain things that stick out to you a lot, depending on sort of how your thumbnails look. And those thumbnails can be used in like other ways too, depending on how you promote your videos. And so I use Canva. It's funny that Athens mentioned it, but I use Canva for all my thumbnails, and I definitely recommend it. They have like a YouTube thumbnail section. So they have a bunch of different free and some paid templates and stuff like that, so you can create your own branding with your YouTube channel. A thing that I also recommend with thumbnails is to have your face visible, because people, there's like statistics about it, but people click on thumbnails and videos that show your face more often than not. And then also have a picture of you with a book, either you holding a book, you holding a stack of books, or you can see in the bottom left, there's one person who just had the book image on the side, things like that. So people kind of know what to expect and kind of know what they're coming into. The tags and descriptions of your YouTube video very much matter. If YouTube is owned by Google, and Google is very into metadata. And so metadata makes a huge, huge difference. So at the top of the screenshot that I have, you'll see this thing that says like all recommendations, reading, book reviews, comedy, budget, unboxing, all this stuff. Basically what they've done with their current iteration of YouTube, they are always changing their algorithms, is they're basically looking at the tags that people are putting in their videos. And if you watch a lot of a certain type of video, then they're basically grouping them all together. So right now I've clicked on the book reviews section. And so book reviews from a bunch of different people that I subscribe to and some that I don't subscribe to are showing up on my page. And so this is a really great discoverability tool and really important to, again, the analytics and the Google algorithm. Tags and descriptions also go into general Google searches. One of the great things, again, about YouTube is that it's owned by Google. So sometimes when you're Googling things in general, or when people are Googling things in general, you'll see YouTube videos pop up. And it's happened before where my videos have popped up on the general Google search of different books. So those things like matter a lot. And then my final point here is to start a conversation. People really love being able to talk to the person on camera. And so usually at the end of my videos, I will prompt people and just ask a general question, whether it's something like, talk to me about your experience reading this book. If you've read it before, if you have questions about a book, if I'm talking about books related to a certain theme, I'll ask people for other recommendations that fall into that theme, things like that. But not only does the conversation help people engage with your content, again, it matters to the algorithm. So asking people to leave comments gives Google and YouTube a positive response to your videos. And again, they are more likely to promote it outside of just your page. And also, you may have seen this if you watch other YouTubers, they say like, subscribe, click the bell, all of those things matter. It's kind of obnoxious, or to me, it feels obnoxious to say those things. And I don't say you have to do those things, but it is proven that saying it does make a difference if you want to gain subscribers and help out your own personal analytics. So this is just a quick screenshot of what my page currently looks like. Something else that I always try to give as a recommendation is don't just like upload the videos and leave it like that. Try to make your page look nice in a certain way. I highly recommend making playlists, and it's very cool because you can put all your playlists in different kind of configurations on your page, and it's a nice way to kind of give someone a glimpse of what your page looks like or the types of things you cover on your page. So if you're doing things more than just book talks, if you're also have like author visits or like live events or anything like that, you know, you can highlight those things very easily on your page. And then also like you can do a highlighted video at the very top. That's the My Top Books of 2019 video that I currently have. But all of that, again, could just go into your general branding and just sort of highlight the different things that you want to show to your visitors. And then finally, if you do decide to start a YouTube channel and you're just starting out, there's this thing called the YouTube Creator Academy. It's basically a page that's full of resources of how to start a YouTube channel, as you can see, how to get discovered. If you decide to add AdSense to your page eventually, it'll show how to do all of that and what you need to do to qualify and what to make sure with copyright strikes and all of those different things. But they're literally just classes. So you can learn a lot about how to make your YouTube channel successful. There's also a lot of YouTubers who specifically specialize in promoting YouTube videos and talking about the best ways to like work the analytics and what's going on with YouTube's algorithms and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of things I've learned just from watching other people talk about it. So there are people who like are specialists in marketing who make these videos for free. So yeah, that is everything that I have. Again, I think that joining YouTube is really great. Obviously I'm biased, but I think that it's a really great way for people and your patrons and people outside of your community to really get to know like who you are as a library and the things that you really love, and also just to promote books to a wider community and a wider group of people, and talk about and bring awareness to some things that you think might be of interest to sort of more than just the people who walk into the library every single day.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, we're going to do questions. Allison, were you gonna? Yeah.
Yep. So I've been keeping track, thanks to everyone who has been submitting. I'm going to start from the top and work our way down through the chat and through the Q&As that people submitted. Our first one is, unfortunately, they had a boss who complained about blurry photos that they were getting from their phone. Is there a way to upload photos from their camera to the phone and then up to Instagram?
I'll take that one. Yes, you can. If you can connect your digital camera to your laptop and then use like a scheduling software, as I mentioned, like Later or like a Hootsuite, you can push it that way. It also looks like an opportunity there to say, hey, boss, I might need a device or something of that nature with a better camera megapixel. It doesn't have to be a phone. You don't have to ask for the latest iPhone, but you certainly can get like a new tablet, like a Galaxy Tab or something of that nature. But just to get it up to your Instagram, you can just connect it to your laptop, your desktop, whatever you might have, and then push it out that way. I still would say view it from the phone so you can see, make sure everything looks all right as far as the picture and orientation, but also just the wording and things of that nature. So you still have to like double check it, and I would always double check it from a phone too.
But that's a good, for a library to actually purchase an iPhone, I mean, that would be so worth it. So I think that would be, something to bring up actually.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, it's especially if you're able to show like the stats that support it and say, hey, look, we are getting hundreds of people viewing this, or we're getting a lot of traffic on our social media feeds, to have a dedicated device. Of course, new is always great, but you don't have to get something that's new high end. You can kind of get, an older phone, a used phone, what have you, or just get another tablet that doesn't have to be like the highest end. But the reward on that and kind of the ROI comes back, especially if you're using it for something that's going to get you a lot of traction and promotion.
Great, thanks. The next question is, how often do you post on Instagram? And then related to that, how often do you post in the regular Instagram feed versus Instagram stories?
I'll take this one again. For Instagram, I try to do at least something once a week to make it easier. If you can focus on a collection per week and say, okay, this week we're going to do nonfiction, this week, and new releases are always going to circulate more and kind of have more traction. As Jessica mentioned, you don't have to like promote, James Patterson, but having something once a week, or at least kind of sticking to a hashtag, trend, like a Monday motivation, Thursday throwback. If you can stick to that, then you start kind of getting more excitement or energy to it, and then kind of gauge how much time that's involved. But once a week or so, and then the other platforms, in case everyone's interested, probably that's where you can do a few more, maybe even once a day. Twitter's kind of, you can do multiple times a day. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of the things with like Twitter and Facebook. You can always reshare something. A lot of the vendors that are out there, Hoopla does a great job of kind of creating their own content. So simply just retweeting something can still count as a post versus having to kind of create something on your own.
And then as far as the Insta story or just a post, how do you decide?
Oh, with the Insta stories, I'd like to do more of that, and depending on your demographic, you might even want to have one that's kind of for in Spanish, you know, so that's more kind of demographic specific. But for that, I'd like to do something probably at least once or twice a week. The regular post can be kind of once or twice a week, and you can kind of see as you're doing them, and I've found them in just kind of starting stories, is that there's a lot of views in the stories versus the actual post. Especially in reviving a library social media presence. So that's where if you want to kind of milk that for what it is and try to get as much as you can out of that. So I feel like I'm going to be doing the stories a few more times. And there was a question about like the difference. Well, the post kind of shows up in your feed and that's something you see scrolling, whereas the stories is something that's kind of either at the top held or if they go to your page and view on the stories there.
Like in Facebook, the story like disappears after a short time.
Yeah, that's what's good about when you highlight. So Instagram has the highlights, and I probably could explain it a little bit better. Sorry, but yeah, in the highlights, that's the one that's kind of you know, stayed there or kind of post-it note or whatever there in your Instagram profile. So that way you can start putting your stories in a highlight, which means it doesn't disappear and it just kind of plays continuously. So I created a story that's called eBooks, and the goal is to kind of use that highlight kind of story just to kind of always do something promotion for eBooks. And then you can create another highlighted story section and put something in there that could be for your databases. Your staff picks can be something else there. So there's lots of potential there. And then that way you're not flooding, and I hate to use that word because it sounds negative, but you're not flooding someone's feed and posting a lot of things to where people might scroll through and they might get tired of it. Whereas if they go to your page, now they want to interact, and that's where they play with the stories and view that. So there's lots of potential with stories, and you can have more than one just kind of highlighted story being saved.
Great questions, and thank you for these wonderful answers. Do either of you recommend a tool, link like Linktree, or should you build, I guess this one is for Athens, or build a custom Instagram landing page on your website so that you can add multiple links? Although, Kimberly, if you have anything to add to that too, please do.
I mean, for this one, I've looked at Linktree and it's great because you don't have to kind of rechange the link in bio, and you don't have to keep putting that as part of your moniker when you post, especially if it's something that has a link. It just depends on if you want that traffic on your website. So I do use some of the analytics of our website that kind of gets fed in from social media and like the e-news and stuff like that. So that helps you, you know, kind of get your budget requests for a tablet or things of that nature. So you have that hard data to kind of show what you're working on. But if you use a third party, you might be limited in the analytics that they have. You might have to upgrade to a paid subscription, and then now that's another thing you have to budget for. So it's great to use like a Linktree or something that kind of, you know, encapsulates all your links into one without changing your link in bio every time. But then you have to look at the flip side and say, okay, well, then I'm not going to get as much of accurate traffic with my Google Analytics on your website, if that's something that you monitor.
Okay, thank you. So this one is for sure for both of you. How many likes and comments do you typically get, and how do you judge the success of a post based on the response, or are there other factors?
Is that me again?
It could be both of us.
You can go first this time.
Okay, thanks. I don't know that I pay so much attention to how many likes I'm getting. Sometimes I can post something and maybe it's just the wrong time of day and I don't get a ton of likes, and so be it. That's fine. I like to put out content. Again, I try to do positive things as well. I don't usually write negative reviews. I like to put out things that I know that I like and something that I might be proud of. So, you know, if it gets so many views or likes, then, you know, whatever. What I find successful is those comments, the engagement. If people actually like something and they are driven to then write to me about it, then that's what I like more. The communication with other people who really like the, you know, something that I had posted.
Yeah, and I'm the same too. I mean, especially since I have staff that are kind of doing some social media posting too, to where it's like, look, it's like doing a program. You know, sometimes you're going to have people show up and sometimes you're going to have people not show up, but you're building that excitement maybe in them to kind of think outside the box and how they can be creative with their photos, or how to be creative with a handout or something to promote an ebook or a database. So the likes are one thing. And I feel like for likes, it's really, if you're going to hit a person at the right moment. If you post a picture of you and your dog reading a book, well, then you're gonna get 20 likes from dog lovers, you know, so it just depends on who's viewing it. But that's where I'm starting to see that there's a lot of potential with like stories, because maybe people are just clicking your story for no reason, but you're getting more views. At least that's what I'm finding in my stories versus kind of how much I'm reaching people. And if you're reporting statistics on this, I wouldn't report like the number of followers that change month to month or the number of likes from month to month. You know, dive into, even though they're limited with the analytics on Instagram, like the reach, or how many people how many people are seeing it in their feed that way. Because then that way you're getting hundreds of kind of numbers there versus like just a couple of likes. And my transparency, you saw one of the posts I just did recently, and we're starting it kind of from the ground up a little bit. So it's going to take some time, especially if your library doesn't have an Instagram, or if you're kind of reviving it. It's going to take time to grow. And the best way is to make sure that you're promoting that avenue on your website, handouts, flyers, things of that nature too.
Okay, thanks. We still have a good handful of questions, so I'm going to try and go a little faster. I am, sorry. Oh no, I lost the question from 239. Here we go. I'd love some tips to use Instagram stories for readers advisory. I've seen an author throw out the question, what do you want to read? And she'll connect the request she gets with a cover and stickers. And then I've seen libraries do similar things and not use cover images, and it just seems disappointing. Instagram is a frustrating platform for me personally, and I'd love some tips with leveling up.
I think for this one, when I saw this come through, I immediately kind of thought, well, maybe you can do like a little bit of a recording where you either have a patron or you have someone reading like, oh, I'm interested in a book that's a coming of age character. And then you flip to like the book cover being as like a sticker or kind of like a picture of the book cover. So I thought of that when I saw this question, like that'd be kind of a cool way to level up your RA, is that you kind of present something that's like the question, or what's the goal? Like, I love James Patterson, but I want something like this. And then you have a title that does that, instead of reversing and saying like, oh, if you love mysteries, well then here's a good mystery. I think if you kind of make the question a little more like casual conversation, then people might like that more.
Great, thank you. On to some YouTube questions, and then we'll hit the people who sent us questions in the Q&A section. For YouTube, are the book talks single book videos or genre specific with a few books in each video?
So the way I do it is one title per video. You could definitely do genre specific, and that's more what Rincey does too, I think. But also what I have done in the past is like taken a trilogy and talked about the whole trilogy in one video. But generally, I just like to talk about one book. I usually have plenty to talk about in 2 minutes about one book. So, and because one of my goals is to keep my videos short, that is a priority for me. And one thing I wanted to mention, because I know someone commented, it wasn't a question, but they were saying they would be afraid of giving away spoilers. One thing that helped me, at least in the beginning, because I think you get good at not giving away spoilers the more you do it, although I certainly have probably recently, but I think one really good tip is just to talk about the first like 2 chapters. So if you're just talking about the first 2 chapters,
right? It's like the hook.
Yeah, it's the hook, exactly. So you're talking about the characters, the setting, and why it's interesting, and then you end it there, and so that way you really do avoid giving away the spoilers. Sorry, I addressed that one too. I had the mic.
No, great. That's great. Also, yeah, talk about the appeal of it as readers advisory people, not so much the plot, but who, what is it, an atmospheric setting, etc. So did you want to add something, Rincey?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same in terms of
You do
like,
both, right? Sometimes
yeah,
you
I do
just do
both.
one book and then sometimes you do like what you've been reading.
Yeah, so like most of the stuff I've been doing lately is basically like a wrap up of all the books that I've been reading lately that I've been really enjoying. And so like every week I'll talk about, 2 or 3 books. And I'm also going to jump ahead a little bit. I saw someone talk about how to like promote books that may not be very popular. And honestly, like one of the best ways you can do that is in kind of like a wrap up or themed video, because then you're pulling people in with maybe a popular title. And a lot of times what I'll do in especially like themed videos is the picture in my thumbnail will be the picture of the most popular book in the stack. So that kind of appeals to people and people click on it because they'll be like, oh, I like that book, or oh, I've heard of that book. I want to know what she thinks of it. And then they'll hear about more options or doing a kind of like if this then that sort of this thing recommendation. Like if you like this really popular book, you might like these other ones as well. Those are usually a great way to talk about things that are less popular. But yeah, I definitely do both. And I find that actually single book reviews usually have a longer tail, so they might not be very popular at first, but there are books that I've talked about like in 2015 that get like major reviews or major views now because they like got made into an adaptation of some sort and people are looking them up, or like just people are eventually picking them up and then like they'll come and find my videos way later. So yeah, I definitely think there's value to both.
Thank you both so much. How much planning is involved in making a book video?
Okay, I'll start. I purposely plan almost nothing at all because I want it to be authentic. So literally what I do is on the way to, this is funny to confess, on the way to work that morning, on the way there, I talk about the book in my car. And just to myself, like out loud, because then I'm just talking through the points that I remember about it and what I liked about it. And it's authentic. The one thing I do is I will put a Post-it note sometimes just on the back of the book that no one can see, right? So if I'm holding the book like this, no one can see it. And the Post-it will just have sometimes like a year, like in case I have the wrong year in my brain, or a character name that's like intricate or one that I have trouble remembering. So sometimes I'll have little notes like that, but otherwise I have almost no prep time, and that is intentional.
I'm kind of the same way. I don't really prep too much in advance because again, I want it to be pretty natural. And a tip that I always tell people as well is if you are preparing and like you're someone who forgets details that you want to remember, like character names, or there's like a specific thing that happens, use an index card as your bookmark while you're reading. So that way you can like kind of jot things down as you're reading a book. If you're like, I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about necessarily, but these are things that stood out to me while I'm reading the book. Because then you'll have that as like a note that you could use as like an outline or just like general points that you could have when you're recording your video. If you want to do again like theme things, I also have like a Google Doc like Melissa does with like ideas, and sometimes in that Google Doc I'll like throw in the books that I want to include in that theme or something along those lines, so that way like you're kind of prepping as you like go through life, and so that way when you're ready to record or anything along those lines, like there's always something available and you're kind of always a little bit prepared.
I should mention one more thing. It's that I've used a lot of these books I've discussed. So they're pretty, like I've gone through the intricacies of a lot of these books. And so a lot of times I can just talk about them like that because I've talked about them in a group setting several times. So in some ways it's easier. And the books that I don't know as well maybe would require a little more thought.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions that are similar, so I'm going to group these together. At my library, we have a communications engagement officer who maintains our website and media, but I think some aspects of social media should be utilized by librarians. Interestingly, I don't think I have seen any job descriptions that mention social media work, which ties in well with this question that we have from another participant. Who are looking for tips on quality control for multi-department social media post creation efforts. We went from 1 or 2 people doing everything and expanded to almost everyone contributing. Where did it go? Sorry, somebody added another question and I moved it. We went from 1 or 2 people doing everything and expanded to almost everyone contributing to share the enormous effort, and even with guidelines and a coordinator checking them, we've still experienced hiccups. So I guess best practice for librarians contributing to the social media that might be run by somebody else.
I just want to say that I do social media as a part of my job, and I think that hiccups are normal because that is the downside to having more people do it, but also there's a huge upside, which is that you're getting all these different voices and you're getting all these different perspectives from a library. So you're not only getting like maybe the professional social media people, but you're getting the librarians and maybe a circ person who saw a cute thing get returned in a book, or whatever it may be. I think the best thing you can do is like schedule through Hootsuite and go from there. And there are going to be hiccups when you have that many people involved. At least that's my take.
And I agree. And I think if you can do kind of like, some libraries have like a social media committee, if you can at least get on the same page as far as, your voice, because someone could be really creative and they're running away with their ideas and their postings where someone's, trying to upload a Word document or something in a post. So there could be that variance there. So you want to get everyone on the same page as far as like, look, links don't work on this platform, but they work on this platform. Videos, we can't have more than a minute. We have to have good quality. So there needs to be some training so you can iron out some of those bumps when you go live. And if you could start kind of in piecemeal and say, okay, one person does this database or this collection or this day of the week, that makes it easier, because that's the last thing you want to do is everyone's logging in, scheduling things, and then you're just, tripping over each other, posting 5 minutes after someone else just posted, and then leave one person to do the library type of news. Not everyone needs to say like, we're closed today at 9 or something like that, or, happy holidays or something like that. Let one person handle that instead of everyone trying to, say the same thing.
Thank you. An anonymous viewer would like to know, how many books does Jessica Stalker read per month?
I probably read per month what Rincey reads in 1 week. I read maybe a book a week.
Great, thanks. For branding purposes, how do you get around Canva's inability to do vectors and CMYK colors?
Doesn't it do that?
I guess you would have to, I'm trying to think if I got rid of those roadblocks when I went from like the free to the paid. I'm not sure. I know you do get over some hurdles when you kind of go from like the free to the paid. And then even when you get like the nonprofit one, which they have, if you reach out to them, there still might be a little bit of a limitation there. So I'm not fully sure how to answer that, except maybe it might be something that's based on like your level of your subscription.
Yeah. But a lot of people did chime in on the chat saying that Canva was great, and I'll add to that. Yes, it's really good for any kind of graphics and posting on Instagram or Facebook or flyers or anything.
Great, thanks. When using Bookstagram or Booktube to influence purchasing, how do we work against algorithms that promote popularity and or related books rather than what might be best for our patrons?
Purchasing like collection development?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it's, if I can, kind of get the question, I think is if the algorithms or whatnot are promoting the popular materials, then how can you use that to kind of justify, for your collection management? So I kind of see them, they kind of can be the same as far as collection management and promotion, but I don't think I would use so much what's being promoted to influence, because you might get a lot of likes on something that's promoting a popular author because you use the right hashtags or something like that. So maybe if you're able to get the question a little bit clarified so at least I can understand it better.
Okay, I will see if the person who asked wants to clarify in the chat. Another question we got is for Rincey, which is, how many books do you read a month?
Well, the number has changed significantly since stay-at-home orders came out, so I feel like my numbers this year are really inflated. But per month, I usually can, well, on the low end, it's usually like 6, and on the high end, I can get up to 10 to 12, depending. Yeah, but during stay-at-home orders, I was like doing a book every other day or something, just because I had nothing else to do.
Great.
Well, now we have to know how many Melissa reads. I'm going to ask you anonymous because no one's going to care what I.
We want to know how many you read as well.
Audiobook for my commute. Yeah, I'm probably.
Well, yeah, that definitely counts.
Yeah. Yep. Depends on who's reading it though. That makes a big difference.
That's true. I read about 10 to 12 books a month as well. It has definitely changed and increased during this last few months though too.
Great, and it looks like we did get some clarification to the question about collection development and purchasing. It is for collection development or for promotion. So let me go back to the original question. If you need it. Yes, when using Bookstagram or BookTube to influence purchasing, how do we work against algorithms that promote popularity and or related books rather than what might be best for our patrons? And so that is for collection development and promotion of the collection.
I guess you wouldn't really use the results you get from your promotion to kind of go over into what you're going to purchase for your patrons. I mean, if it's a popular book and it's getting a lot of traction on your promotion, then that kind of means you might need to look and see into ordering more depending on hold ratios and things of that nature. As far as the algorithms kind of pushing or whatnot, some of the big name authors you're already going to order, then that's where you still have to look at your circ numbers and say, well, you know, these are trending as far as the social media results and then also the circulation and hold ratio. So popular is going to, you know, sell no matter what. So if you're selling more of it because you're doing promotion with it and the algorithms are pushing upwards, then maybe that's more promotion for your patrons to get that popular book again, or to read something similar.
Okay, is that about it for questions, Allison?
That is, there are a lot of tips and tricks for converting colors in Canva if people want to take a look at that. But yeah, that is it for questions. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, so thanks again to our panelists, Jessica, Rincey, Melissa, Athens. Everyone, I think, enjoyed it. Some good feedback. We're going to post on our art website, artreads.org. We're going to post this recording, I think, right? But at least the panelists info. And yeah, people are saying nice program. Thank you. Any last words to wrap up? Am I forgetting anything? Okay.
Stay safe.
Okay, so that's it for our Bookfluencers. Thank you so much. I really loved it. I'm really happy learning some more about Bookstagram myself. So yay, thank you. And
Thanks, Rails, too.
wasn't in person. That's yeah. Okay,
Thank you,
great.
Rails, for doing this for us.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Rails. Okay, have a good night, everybody.
All right, bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.